All right, time to dive into the world of boxers. We've got articles, YouTube videos, even some Wikipedia deep cuts. Someone's been doing their homework.
Looks like someone's got puppy fever.
Maybe. But hey, better to be prepared, right?
100%. Whether you're seriously thinking about a boxer or just curious about these bundles of energy, we're here to break it all down.
Perfect. Let's start with the name, because boxer always throws me off. I've seen these dogs play, and it's more like happy paw punching than actual boxing, don't you think?
You're not wrong. That playful energy is definitely a boxer trademark. But their name actually has some surprising roots. We can start with their ancestor, the Bullenbeißer.
Okay, so where does that name come from?
The Bullenbeißer was a powerful breed used for hunting large game in Germany.
Oh, wow. So we're talking serious muscle back then. But how do we get from there to boxer?
So one theory is that boxer comes from Boxel, which was a Bavarian term for those short pants working dogs wore.
Oh, really? So it's less about fighting and more about, like, practical workwear. So is that where the name comes from? Or is there another explanation?
Well, there's another theory that links back to their playful side. Just picture it. A boxer gets excited. What do? They jump up, paws flying around, almost like they're playfully sparring.
Like those slow-motion dog videos, right? Where their heads are shaking and their ears are flapping everywhere.
Yes. Some people believe that's actually how they got the name boxer.
That's hilarious. All fun and games until someone gets a face full of jowl. Okay, so enough about names. Can we talk about their lug? Those markings are incredible.
Absolutely. Their coats are like artwork. You've got your fawns, your brindles, those black masks, and of course those adorable white markings sometimes.
It's like dog fashion. Can you break it down for me? What's the difference between fawn and brindle?
Okay, so think of fawn as a range of warm colors, light tans and yellows, rich reds, even a deep mahogany.
So, like, if you see a really dark brown boxer.
Exactly. In Europe, they often call those richer fawns red boxers. Now, brindle is where things get really interesting. It means black stripes on a fawn background.
Stripes! So cool.
Right, but here's the catch. Some brindles have so many stripes that they almost look completely black.
Whoa, really? That's wild.
They're sometimes called reverse brindles.
Yeah.
It all comes down to genetics, which actually brings us to another fascinating thing about boxer coats, white markings.
Oh, yeah, the white boxers. I've heard things, like that they're all deaf.
Ah, yes, the classic white boxer myth. And like a lot of dog myths, there's a grain of truth, but also a lot of misinformation. For starters, white boxers aren't actually that rare. About 20–25% of boxer puppies are born with white markings that cover more than a third of their bodies.
Wow, I had no idea.
And yes, the gene that causes those white coats, IS, link to congenital deafness.
So there is a connection, but that doesn't mean that every white boxer is deaf, right?
Exactly. It's estimated that around 18% of white boxers might be deaf in one or both ears.
So a slightly higher chance, but definitely not a guarantee.
Exactly. It's definitely higher than their fawn and brindle counterparts, but it's not a certainty at all. Sadly, this misinformation led to some really unethical breeding practices in the past.
Like breeders euthanizing perfectly healthy white puppies just because of a myth? That's horrible.
I know, it's truly heartbreaking. But the good news is, things are changing. Responsible breeders are much more likely to find loving homes for white boxers, regardless of their hearing. Because at the end of the day, every dog deserves a loving home, right?
Absolutely, 1,000%. Speaking of smarts, though, what's going on behind those soulful boxer eyes? Are they really as intelligent as everyone says?
Well, boxer intelligence is interesting. Some experts rank them as average compared to other working breeds, but their learning style is what sets them apart.
How so?
Well, boxers are incredibly intuitive and eager to please their people.
Ah, so maybe not top of the class in obedience school, but definitely A+ in emotional intelligence.
You got it. They really thrive on positive reinforcement and mental stimulation. Think puzzle toys, interactive games, even learning new tricks, anything that keeps those brains engaged.
It's like they need a job, even if that job is professional treat puzzle solver. Which makes me think, if we're talking boxer energy levels, this can't be a breed for folks who just want a Netflix buddy.
You're reading my mind. We'll talk more about exercise in a bit, but let's just say if you're considering a boxer, invest in some good walking shoes. You're going to need them.
And maybe a sturdy fence, depending on how strong those zoomies are. Okay, before we get into all that, let's talk about the not-so-fun stuff, health. Every breed has its concerns, so what should potential boxer owners be aware of?
That's the responsible thing to ask. Like any breed, boxers are prone to certain health conditions. Some are more serious than others, and being informed is key.
Like cancer, for instance. I know that's a big one for boxers.
Unfortunately, yes. Cancers, including things like mast cell tumors, lymphoma, and hemangiosarcoma, are relatively common in boxers. It's a tough reality, but it's why regular vet checkups are so crucial.
So early detection is key. What else should owners be prepared for health-wise?
Well, besides cancer, boxers are also predisposed to heart conditions like aortic stenosis, which is a narrowing of the aortic valve, and also a specific type of cardiomyopathy.
Cardiomyopathy, that sounds intense. What is that exactly?
It's a disease of the heart muscle that makes it harder for the heart to pump blood effectively. And unfortunately, it can be really serious, even fatal in some cases.
Wow, that's scary. So what can owners do? Are there any preventative measures?
The most important thing is responsible breeding. Reputable breeders will screen their dogs for these conditions to reduce the risk of passing them on to puppies. They'll be your best resource for understanding the lineage and potential health concerns.
So do your research, ask the right questions, and find a breeder who prioritizes the health of their dogs above all else.
Exactly. Knowledge is power when it comes to making responsible choices for your future furry friend.
Okay, so we've covered the serious stuff. Now let's get to the good stuff. What makes living with a boxer so special? Tell me about those goofy grins and playful personalities.
Oh, get ready for some laughs, because boxers are total goofballs. They have this playful, almost clownish personality that's absolutely infectious.
Like when they do that kidney bean wiggle, where their whole body gets in on the action.
Exactly. Or those times when they get so excited they forget how big they are and try to fit in your lap like a tiny puppy.
Oh, or when they wiggle their whole body with joy when you come home. It's like they haven't seen you in years, even if you just stepped out for 5 minutes.
They are masters of expressing their joy, that's for sure. But beyond the silliness, boxers are incredibly loyal and protective of their families. They form deep bonds with their humans and are always ready to defend them, even if it's just from the mailman.
They're like big, goofy, lovable bodyguards. But there has to be at least one downside to living with a boxer, right? Nobody's perfect.
Well, besides those potential health issues we talked about, there is one, shall we say, aromatic quirk that boxers are known for.
Oh, you mean the boxer emissions.
Exactly. Let's just say they're not known for their delicate digestive systems.
So maybe invest in some air freshener along with that dog bed. Good to know. But in all seriousness, they really do sound like special dogs.
They really are. Loyal, loving, goofy, and full of energy. They might have a few quirks, but that's all part of their charm, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. They're a breed that grows on you, even with the occasional toot. But speaking of growing, did you know that boxers actually mature incredibly slowly compared to other breeds?
It's true. While some breeds are considered adults around a year old, boxers can keep that puppy-like energy and playfulness for years, sometimes even into their 4th or 5th year.
So they're basically the Peter Pan of dogs, forever young at heart. That's adorable.
It really is. They never truly lose that playful spark, which is part of what makes them so endearing. But it also means their training and socialization needs to be consistent and ongoing. They need firm but loving guidance to channel all that energy in a positive direction.
Makes sense. Don't let that goofy grin fool you. There's a sharp mind in there that needs just as much exercise as their body. Speaking of, how MUCH exercise are we talking about here?
Well, get ready to break out those running shoes. A quick walk around the block just isn't going to cut it for a boxer. Remember those bull and bicer ancestors we were talking about?
Oh, right. The hunting dog.
Exactly. That drive to run and chase is still ingrained in their DNA. A boxer needs at least 1-2 hours of vigorous exercise every single day.
Wow, 1-2 hours. That's a serious commitment. What does that look like for a boxer owner?
Think long walks, runs in the park, hikes on the trails, even a rousing game of fetch in the backyard. They've got energy to burn, and if you don't provide an outlet for it, things can get a little destructive.
Destructive how? Like chewing on furniture, digging up the garden, that sort of thing?
You got it. A bored boxer is a destructive boxer. They need both physical and mental stimulation to be happy and well-adjusted members of the family.
So it's not just about wearing them out physically, it's about challenging their minds, too.
Exactly. And speaking of mental stimulation, training is a fantastic way to do both. Challenge their minds, and strengthen your bond.
Makes sense. But are there any specific challenges when it comes to training a boxer? You mentioned they can be a bit stubborn.
They can indeed. Boxers are independent thinkers. which can make training a bit more challenging than with some other breeds. But the key is to remember that it's a partnership, not a power struggle. You're on the same team, working towards a common goal.
So what's the best approach? How do you motivate a dog that might have a touch of selective hearing when it comes to commands?
It all comes back to positive reinforcement. Find what motivates your boxer treats, praise, a quick game of tug, and use it. Keep training sessions short and sweet. Remember, they have short attention spans and always end on a positive note.
It's about setting them up for success.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to get creative with your training. Boxers are smart, and they thrive on variety. Instead of drilling the same old commands, try teaching them fun tricks or using puzzle toys in their training.
That's a great idea. Keeps things interesting for both of you. Speaking of keeping things interesting, we've touched on their diet a bit, but what should you be feeding a boxer to keep them healthy, energized, and ready for all that activity?
Great question. Because of their high energy and muscular build, boxers need a diet that's packed with protein, healthy fats, and essential nutrients. And the quality of their food matters just as much as the quantity.
So we're talking premium brands, not the bargain bin stuff.
You got it. Look for foods that list real meat and whole grains as the first few ingredients, and avoid those with fillers, artificial colors, and flavors. You know the drill.
So basically, read the label carefully. What about portion control? How much should you be feeding a boxer, and does it change as they get older?
Portion control is key, especially with a breed that loves to eat as much as a boxer. A good rule of thumb is to follow the feeding guidelines on your chosen food brand, but also adjust based on your dog's age, activity level, and any specific dietary needs.
Okay, so pay attention to those feeding guidelines, but also use your best judgment, and don't be afraid to consult with your vet if you have any concerns.
That's exactly right. Every dog is different, and what works for one boxer might not work for another. Your vet can help you determine the optimal diet and feeding schedule to keep your furry friend happy, healthy, and at a healthy weight.
That makes perfect sense. So we've covered the basics of boxer care, diet, exercise, training. But before we move on, let's talk a bit about their history. You mentioned their bull and bison ancestors were used for hunting and guarding. But what else can you tell us about their fascinating past? What other breeds contributed to the boxer we know and love today?
Now we're diving into my favorite topic, boxer history. It's more than just the bull and bison, though that's a huge piece of the puzzle. They are also crossed with bulldogs, which explains some of their tenacity and strength.
Oh, interesting. So they've got that bulldog toughness in them, too.
Absolutely. And there are even whispers of Great Dane and Terrier somewhere in their lineage.
Wow, talk about a melting pot of breeds. So they've got a bit of everything in their bloodline, the strength of the bull and bison, the tenacity of the bulldog, maybe a dash of the Great Dane's elegance, and a sprinkle of the terrier's playful spirit.
You nailed it. And that's what makes them so unique. They're a wonderful blend of seemingly opposite traits. Strong yet sensitive, playful yet protective, goofy yet incredibly loyal. But how they transition from being fierce hunters and guardians to the beloved family companions they are today, that's a story in itself.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me everything. How did the boxer go from working dog to beloved family member?
Well, their transformation began in the late 19th century in Germany. A group of breeders set out with a vision to create a dog that was strong and agile, intelligent and obedient, but above all, loyal and loving. They wanted a dog that could excel in both the working world and the home, and thus began the journey to refine the boxer breed into what we know and love today.
That's fascinating. So they were intentionally bred to be companions as well as working dogs.
Absolutely. And it's that unique blend of traits that has made them so enduringly popular over the years. They're truly versatile dogs, capable of excelling in a variety of roles. But of course, like with any breed, there are certain physical characteristics that have been, let's say, adjusted over the years. And there's definitely some ethical debate surrounding them.
You're talking about those cropped ears and docked tails, right? I've always wondered about that. It's not as common these days, but it's still something people associate with the breed. What's the story behind those practices?
It's complicated, with roots in the boxer's working history. Cropping their ears was initially thought to make them less vulnerable to injury during hunts and fights.
Because it's harder to grab onto a floppy ear.
Exactly. It was all about function over form. And the same goes for tail docking. The thinking was that shortening their tails would make them more agile and less prone to injury, especially for dogs working in dense underbrush.
I can see how that made sense at the time, but thankfully, times have changed, haven't they?
They have. Today, we understand that those practices cause unnecessary pain, and can even have negative long-term consequences for the dog's health and well-being.
Thank goodness for that. I'm all for letting those ears flop and tails wag. It's part of their charm. So it sounds like more and more people are embracing the natural look these days.
Absolutely. A lot of countries, including the UK, have actually banned both ear cropping and tail docking.
Really? I didn't realize it had gone that far.
It's becoming much more common. And even in places where it's still legal, like the US, you see more and more people choosing to let their boxers keep their natural ears and tails.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Those floppy ears and wagging tails are just begging to be played with. Speaking of play, you mentioned that boxers are known for some pretty unique behaviors, those signature boxer antics. What are some of your favorites?
Oh, where do I even begin? Their play bows always get me, when they lower their front end to the ground and wiggle their rear ends in the air.
Yes, like they're saying, come on, let's have some fun.
Exactly. Like they're perpetually ready for a party, and everyone's invited. And they have this contagious energy. You just want to join in on the fun.
Another quirk I love is their tendency to, lean on people.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like they want to be as physically close to you as possible at all times.
They're incredibly affectionate dogs, and they crave that close connection with their humans. Of course, sometimes that affection can be a little much, especially for people who aren't used to a 70-pound dog draped over them on the couch. I can imagine. But it's all part of their charm, right? Gotta love a dog that's enthusiastic about cuddling. So we've talked about their playful side, their affectionate side. Are there any other quirks potential boxer owners should know about?
Well, one thing that often surprises new boxer owners is their, shall we say, vocal nature.
They're not big barkers, though, are they?
They're not necessarily big barkers, no, but they tend to communicate in other ways.
You're talking about those grumbles and growls and snorts like they're talking in their sleep.
Exactly. It's all part of their expressive nature. They use a variety of sounds to communicate their needs, their wants, their emotions. It can be a little startling at first, but once you get used to it, it's like you've unlocked a whole new level of communication.
That's amazing. It's like having a furry, four-legged conversation partner. So it's all about getting to know your boxer and understanding their individual quirks.
Exactly. Every boxer is unique, just like any other dog. But there are some general challenges that are common to the breed that potential owners should know about. For instance, because of their short coats, they're not very well suited to extreme temperatures.
So they're more of an indoor dog than an outdoor dog.
They definitely enjoy spending time both indoors and outdoors, but it's important to make sure they're protected from extreme heat and cold. If you live in a place with really hot summers or really cold winters, you'll need to take extra precautions to keep your boxer comfortable.
So maybe invest in a good doggy sweater for those chilly morning walks.
And always make sure they have plenty of fresh water. Another thing to keep in mind is that boxers can be prone to certain skin issues, especially around their facial wrinkles.
Oh, right. Those adorable wrinkles need a little extra TLC, don't they?
They do. It's important to keep those wrinkles clean and dry to prevent any infections or irritations. Regular cleaning with a damp cloth and a gentle, dog-safe wipe can make a huge difference.
Noted. So skincare is important. Anything else? What about shedding? Do those short coats mean they're low maintenance in the fur department?
While their short coats are definitely lower maintenance compared to some other breeds, don't let that fool you. Boxers are shedders.
Oh no, so I should be prepared for a fine dusting of boxer glitter around the house.
You got it. Regular brushing can help to minimize the shedding, but it's just something you'll have to embrace as part of the boxer experience. Think of it as a little reminder of their presence, even when they're napping soundly in the other room.
Okay, so vocalizations, temperature sensitivity, skincare, shedding. It sounds like there are definitely some things to consider before bringing a boxer home, but I have a feeling that for the right person, those are all small prices to pay for the love and companionship they offer, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Boxers are incredibly rewarding dogs. They bring so much joy and laughter into their humans' lives. Yes, they have their quirks, but those quirks are part of what makes them so special.
I wholeheartedly agree. But before we wrap up our deep dive into all things boxer, what final words of wisdom do you have for our listeners who might be thinking about welcoming one of these goofy, loving dogs into their homes?
If you're considering opening your heart and home to a boxer, the most important thing is to do your research. And it sounds like you're doing that right now, so kudos to you. But really, Make sure you're prepared to give them the exercise, the mental stimulation, the training, and the care that they need to thrive.
So be honest with yourself about your lifestyle, your living situation, and your ability to commit to meeting a boxer's needs.
Exactly. A boxer can bring so much joy to the right home, but it's important to make sure it's a good fit for both of you. Think about your daily routine, your activity level, and whether you have the time and resources to devote to a dog that needs a lot of attention, exercise, and training.
It's about finding the right dog for your life, not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
You got it. And don't forget about finding a responsible breeder. We talked about the ethical concerns with some breeding practices, so make sure you're doing your research and supporting breeders who prioritize the health and well-being of their dogs.
That's a great point. How can our listeners identify a responsible breeder? What are some red flags to watch out for?
Well, that's where your research skills come in. A responsible breeder is going to be happy to answer all your questions. And I mean detailed questions, not just surface-level stuff.
So don't be shy about asking about their breeding practices, health testing, the lineage of their dogs, and all of it.
Exactly. They should be able to tell you everything you want to know. A good breeder is going to be proud to share that information with you, and they'll also be really focused on finding the right homes for their puppies.
So it's not just about getting the dogs out the door.
Not at all. They should be interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing them.
Makes sense. They're not just trying to make a quick buck. They actually care where these dogs end up.
Right. A responsible breeder cares about the well-being of their dogs and wants to make sure they're going to loving, responsible homes. And they'll be there to offer support throughout your boxer's life, too. It's not just a one-time transaction.
That's so important. You want someone who's going to be a resource for you.
Absolutely. So trust your gut, do your research, and don't be afraid to walk away if something doesn't feel right. There are great breeders out there, but you have to be willing to put in the time to find them.
It's like dating, but for dogs.
Huh. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
But seriously, bringing a dog into your life is a big responsibility.
It's a big decision, and it's about more than just finding a cute face.
Exactly. You're making a commitment to another living being, one who's going to be by your side for years to come, and hopefully bring you a lot of joy.
And laughter, hopefully. It sounds like boxers really do form these incredible bonds with their people.
They absolutely do. Boxers are known for their loyalty, their unwavering devotion to their families. They're the kind of dogs who will be there for you no matter what, always ready with a wag of the tail and a goofy grin.
That's the kind of love everyone deserves. And I think it makes you realize this whole deep dive hasn't just been about facts about a breed, you know? It's about understanding what makes these dogs tick, what makes them special, and what it means to share your life with a boxer.
Beautifully said. It's about connecting with another living being who's going to love you unconditionally.
And who will challenge you in all the best ways to be a better person.
Absolutely. And bring you endless joy and laughter. They're the best.
And maybe teach you how to speak fluent boxer, snorts and all.
Exactly. It's a language worth learning. So to everyone out there thinking about getting a boxer, I say go for it. Do your research, find a great breeder, and get ready for a love that is as big and bouncy as a boxer doing zoomies in a field full of squeaky toys.
I couldn't have said it better myself. That's about all the time we have for today's deep dive into the world of boxers. We've covered so much ground: their history, their unique traits, the joys and the challenges of sharing your life with these goofy, loving dogs.
We've talked about their exercise needs, their ideal diet, even those training quirks. And of course, the importance of responsible breeding, making sure you're getting your boxer from a place that prioritizes their health and well-being.
And most importantly, we've touched on that incredible bond that can form between a boxer and their human. It's something truly special. So to our listeners, if you're considering adding a boxer to your family, remember, knowledge is power.
Arm yourself with information, trust your gut, and be ready for a whole lot of love, laughter. Maybe even a few surprises along the way.
And who knows, you might even learn to love that dog breath in the morning. Until next time, everyone happy tail wags.